Evie was born on the last day of July during a heat wave in 2021, and she came via an emergency C-section.
Like, I remember when she was born, she was just the most amazing thing I'd ever seen.
Yeah, it was hard to believe that she was actually there and pink and crying, and we were all in the same room together, even though we'd spent the last 9 months being in the same room together, but she was out.
Like, we had spent so long just thinking about her and really worried that she wouldn't arrive, because there was a lot of concern around whether or not she would survive to the end of the pregnancy, let alone the first few moments of life. Was always a concern. So to see her and actually get to meet her was just one of the most wonderful things in the whole world.
Yeah. The surgeon held her up for us to see her, but then she was kind of taken away for some support for her breathing. So it felt like 2 seconds that we got to see her, and then she was taken away. And obviously I was still on the table, so Ross went over after a little while to see her, and you touched her hand.
Yeah, she had the softest hand I'd ever touched in my whole life.
And she still does.
She still does.
But it felt like an eternity that I was waiting, because I couldn't see them. Even when I turned my head, I could just see bodies in scrubs. And I couldn't really hear her anymore, because I don't think she was crying anymore. She was just taking everything in, as she does. So it felt like a very long time before the midwife brought her over to me. And she was all wrapped up in a blanket and had a little purple and white hat on, and the midwife put her face next to my face. And the first thing I asked was, does she have brown eyes? Which she doesn't. Still doesn't. They're very much blue. And I remember kissing her face. And then they took her away. They took her to the NICU. So she stayed there for 10 days, which is quite a short time, really. And during that time, she had a scan of her heart. So we had them during the pregnancy, but this was the first one that she'd had as a baby on the outside. And it showed kind of the same things that they had picked up during the pregnancy. He has an AVSD, which is one of the most common heart defects in babies with Down syndrome, but she also has hypoplastic right heart, which is where the right side of the heart is smaller than the left. And she also has a common valve which causes regurgitation. Basically means that oxygenated and deoxygenated blood mixes when it shouldn't. The pressures in her lungs are quite high, so that causes damage to her lungs, and that's because of the set of defects that she has. But there was a tiny little bit of hope given to us that things would improve, or as she grew things would change and she might be a candidate for surgery further down the line.
We were really terrified in those first few days and weeks, and we just wanted to spend as much time with her as we possibly could.
It was a very much wait and see approach, and that's quite difficult, but it does kind of push you to try and make more memories, and we really did push to get her out of the NICU so that we could bring her home and just spend that like quality time together as a family, just in case, because we didn't really know what was around the corner.
You know, things like this happen, and like, you know that it happens to people, but I suppose you never really think about the fact that it might happen to your family.
Yeah.
And when it does, it really is just completely devastating. It really just completely shake your world, and it just puts a completely new perspective on everything. And it really shows you kind of what the most important things are to you in your life.
Yeah, it definitely puts a different perspective on everything. The cardiologist had told us that around 6 weeks she would most likely go into heart failure, and that's basically what happened.
this was when her team confirmed to us that she was in heart failure.
And they also confirmed that she wouldn't be a candidate for surgery. So we went down for an appointment for the scan of her heart, the echo, and we were, even though we were geared up for that eventuality, we were still obviously devastated, but we were quite taken aback that this was the final answer, that, you know, no amount of growing or, you know, her developing was going to change the structure of her heart, basically.
Yeah, like in our minds, even though we knew she was really sick, she was getting stronger, and she was particularly after the NG tube went in, she was gaining weight, and she was doing everything developmentally that you would expect, and she was really thriving. And it was really great to see. So for her to be referred to the palliative team was really devastating. Yeah,
like it was almost like we didn't want anything to do with them, even though they were going to be a support to us, because this was our reality. But it's so hard to get your head around that your 6-week-old baby is under the care of palliative, because I know people get afraid when they hear the word palliative, because essentially it means, you know, end of life. I started to reach out to families and groups online, and Boston was the name that just kept coming up and coming up and coming up. So I said it to Ross that I might start looking for a second opinion, just to see was there different eyes to look at her, just you know, just to get a different picture.
We felt like we needed to do something. Like she was growing, getting stronger, but her prognosis hadn't changed to reflect that, and you know, every day that went past we were just falling more and more in love with her, and we just needed to do everything that we possibly could to
just as her parents, and make sure that we had explored different avenues for her. So I reached out to Boston, and Evie was doing really well, and it was the lead up to Christmas. We had just moved into our new house, we got a huge Christmas tree, everything was very festive, and we had one more appointment of the year just before Christmas on the 22nd of December. So we went down to Dublin, and Evie seemed to be okay. She was congested a lot. She had a cold in September, and it seemed like it hadn't really shifted since then. But when we got into her appointment, she had become drowsy and her oxygen levels were very low. So her cardiologist wanted to admit her and have a viral screen done to see what was going on. We were very taken aback again. We were shocked because, you know, we didn't expect that. We thought she was doing okay. And we thought, you know, we'll just be in for a night, we'll get out before Christmas. And it ended up being almost 4 weeks, and she was really sick in ICU for 3, and it was a very kind of cold and numb time for us.
It was really hard. Just spending that time, really hard to see her declining so quickly.
She deteriorated in a few hours, because it was the Wednesday the appointment was, and on the Thursday she had just declined so much and was taken to ICU, and all of a sudden she was really sick, and we had her at home up until then, and she was doing really well. It was really hard to get our heads around.
To be walked through the final stages of life with your child is not something I'd ever want anyone to have to experience. And for it to happen so quickly, for us to think that she was okay, to suddenly talking about her dying in the next few hours. Her condition deteriorated very quickly one of the days, and the understanding was that she wouldn't really survive the night. We were prepared for that, and
they took her off the monitoring and everything, so that there wasn't alarms beeping all the time, because her saturations were jumping around the place. She needed more oxygen, like her heart rate was all over the place. It was a really scary day, and again, I don't know how prepared we were for it, even though we had spent the last few weeks thinking about it. But this was the reality, like hitting you in the face really hard. And they even pushed in another bed so that we could, you know, sleep beside her in the room.
Like we stayed up with her that night and we talked about the life that we wanted for her, and
the life that we had envisioned with our daughter who had Down syndrome possibly still living with us, and you know, all that stuff that we had kind of imagined our future to be like with her. And we said our goodbyes. We did.
We did. Like we didn't think that she'd actually wake up.
No.
It was very clear that was the expectation.
Yeah, like the nurses left us alone and only came in when they really needed to, or you know, if we needed them. And Evie was very comfortable, but she wasn't really there anymore.
She slept pretty much all day.
Yeah.
And she was really tired.
Yeah.
We all fell asleep together.
Yeah, we did. We didn't, you know, we didn't know what was going to happen, but the next morning we woke up and Evie woke up and she was still weak, but
I really feel like that morning really was a turning point for her. She seemed to just kind of get more a burst of energy more and more throughout the day, and then she just continued on past that point, and we were home then like 2 or 3 days later.
and then she just started to improve, like little bit by bit, and she was still developing as, you know, as if nothing had happened. She had learned to roll, and you know, we started our weaning journey, and it felt very, very strange. It was like, it's like someone had told us one thing but placed us in a different reality.
Yeah, like she just wasn't behaving in the way that, you know, was expected of a child who was so sick.
Yeah.
And then in March, Boston Hospital reached out to you.
Yeah, they replied with their second opinion, and we didn't know what their answer was going to be. We thought it could possibly be the same as Dublin, that they wouldn't do anything with her heart, but they actually said that they had a set of surgical procedures that they could do that could correct her defects, or at least alleviate some of her symptoms, because she does struggle. She struggles with her breathing, and you know, she still tires very easily. So we received the second opinion, and I think we were a bit torn. We were like, we'd been given a lifeline, but at the same time it was going to uproot our family if we opted for it.
And it was scary as well. Like it's putting your child through heart surgery. It's putting them through something that's very dangerous.
The biggest fear we have with this route is Evie's lung damage, because once it gets to a certain point, then it becomes irreversible, and basically that means that she can't have any surgery to fix any of the heart defects. So time really is not on Evie's side. But you're proving everyone wrong. And we just feel that we need to do something to help her as well, because she's fought so hard. So it feels like we need to fight equally as hard. And if that means, you know, uprooting our family and taking her to Boston, then that's something that we want to do for her. If we ever feel that something isn't going to be the right option for her, then we're not going to pursue that.
Yeah.
But that's something that we've kind of learned along the way. Like, we have to navigate certain situations and, you know, assess them to see if it is the right thing for her. And right now our gut is telling us that this is the right thing.
Yeah.
Bye.